Hi everyone. Today I would like to talk to you about portfolios, documentation, and accomplishments. So, the first thing that I'd like to talk to you about is a technical portfolio. Now, if you're in my Linux administration class, the class is actually requiring you to create a portfolio, and you need to have a midterm check in for the portfolio and a final check in for the portfolio. And you might be wondering, what is a portfolio and why is she making me do this? A portfolio can actually be used for a lot of things. We can use a portfolio to showcase the work that we've done. We can use a portfolio to keep track of all of our accomplishments, the projects that we've completed, sort of like a record of the things that we have done professionally. Now, you can actually also use a portfolio during your job hunt. So, one of the ways that you can get a leg up on your job hunt is you can have a portfolio that you send out to the companies and the recruiters so that they can get a better idea of who you are, what you're interested in, and the types of things that you can do. Now, from school, most of your stuff is going to be assignments, and you don't want to put in sort of every assignment you've ever done. You want to put in the assignments that are going to be a really good showcase of your work. For example, let's say you have taken the Programming for IT class in Python. You aren't going to want to put in all of those little tiny practices that you do that are your first attempt at reading a file, your first attempt at a loop. Those aren't going to be good representations for your portfolio. However, the final project that you spent multiple weeks on and you put up on your GitHub, that's going to be a really good representation of all of the things that you've learned about how to program in Python so that you can show people what you can do and they can get a better and more realistic idea of what you are able to do. Now, if you are building a technical portfolio, there's kind of two ways to go about this. If you are a programmer, then your technical portfolio is going to consist of code that you've written, probably in multiple languages. If you are an IT person, network security person, or kind of anybody but a programmer, instead, you want your portfolio to focus on the thing that you are most interested in. For example, let's say you're in Linux administration and you absolutely love working with servers. It makes you really happy. You've been really enjoying the class. You've loved writing the scripts, and you're really excited to go do more working with servers. Then the bulk of your portfolio is probably going to be servers that you've created, scripts that you've created, and work that you've done to customize your servers for whatever you need them to do. However, let's say, for example, you're a networking person, and instead of being really excited about servers, what makes you really happy is working with networks. In that case, your portfolio is probably going to consist of things like screenshots showing that you are able to work with Active Directory, or how you are able to put together topologies, or how you're able to do user management, set up DHCP pools, all of those things that you do in your networking classes, that's going to be what's going to be in your portfolio. Now, when you're building a technical portfolio, you want to think about what you are telling people. Now, all of these links that I'm sharing, I have also shared on Blackboard. If you would like to go right to that, you're more than welcome to. These are in the learning module on portfolios. So, what you want to do is use your portfolio as a way of telling people about who you are and what you're interested in. You want this to be your best work and your best projects. Don't do the proprietary stuff that your company does. You want your projects. So, all of the projects that you do, all of the pieces of work that you're really proud of, that's what you want to put into your portfolio. You want to show off whatever it is that you're really good at. So let's say maybe networking isn't your thing, servers aren't your thing, technical documentation is your thing. Then maybe what your portfolio should consist of is all of the beautiful technical documentation that you've created. And every time you have a new project or a new thing that you're working on, you can add it to your portfolio. Now, there's some other ways that you can put together your portfolio, but basically, you want to think about who you are. So, you're probably going to want to have something about who you are. Why are you here? Why do you want people to look at your portfolio? Kind of like what you might put in your LinkedIn page. You want to have what you do. It is important that when somebody is looking at your portfolio, it's clear what you are able to do, what you're interested in, and work that you've done to back it up. Now, if you're going to do this as a website, which some people do, and that's completely fine, you can have a contact me page. So, something that works really well is if you put your portfolio out on a website, a way for people to contact you and say, if they were really interested in the things that you've shown, maybe they would like to offer you a job and you would like them to be able to do that. So, an example of a couple portfolios that I just pulled from Google searches. Now, this particular portfolio is more of a code portfolio, and you can see that because they have links on GitHub, but they've created their own website. A relatively sparse website, it's not, colorful and things, but you can see the sites that they've created and the code that they've put on GitHub with a small description of what the code does. That's fine, sounds good. This one did it a little bit differently, another web developer, and they had links to projects they've done. Now, these web developers are most of what you're going to find on the internet because they're the ones that have created portfolios that they're willing to put out on the web. But anybody can actually buy a domain that's your name. You can put your resume and portfolio out there, just like this person did, with a welcome message, the resume, the portfolio, and how to contact them. That's actually a very simple website to put out there. And then you can include that on your resume, on your LinkedIn, and everything like that. So for the portfolio, you just want to focus on what are you interested in? What kind of jobs do you want to get? And then sifting through all of the work that you've done to showcase your best work. Now, the next thing that I want to talk to you about is technical documentation and technical writing. For a lot of this class, you're going to be creating technical documentation to go with what you're submitting. Technical documentation is designed to help you understand what you're seeing, either as part of the code. So, let's say, for example, you're writing code, you want people to be able to contribute to your code, then you might want to have technical documentation to go with that. However, perhaps you are not a coder, totally fine. Then the technical documentation that you would want to have is a description of what you're trying to have someone do. So, for example, the first lab, you are in Linux administration, the first lab. You're creating 2 servers. Your technical documentation should be a step-by-step process of how you created these servers, any changes that you made, screenshots that are included so that somebody could walk through. So you could hand your documentation to someone and they would be able to create a server that is an exact match of your server. A lot of companies will have something called knowledge bases. And as you go through your job, what you're going to do is contribute to this knowledge base. The technical documentation is how you do the contributions. The technical documentation is the way that you're able to share what you've done with the other people that you work with. So you shouldn't have technical documentation that you have to sit and explain to somebody. The technical documentation should stand on its own. So if you hand your technical document to somebody, they should be able to follow along for the entire process and get the same result that you got. Technical documentation can also be used to keep track of all of the things that you're doing. For example, if I'm going to be running a server, I'm going to have technical documentation of what I did to create the server in case somebody else needs to follow me. Then I'm going to want to document all of the changes that I've made to the server. So let's say, for example, I have a server and I want to install MySQL on it because people are going to be using databases. So I would want to have in my technical documentation that I've installed MySQL. I installed it on September 18th. It was a Friday morning. I went through a traditional install and I used version whatever it happened to be, and I've made sure it's up to date. That way, if I go back, I can see exactly when I installed it, I can see when it was up to date, and if I want to update it, I would also note that in my technical documentation so that I have a record of all of the things that I've done. Now, the corollary to this record is I want everybody to start keeping track of your accomplishments. Now, there's record keeping for the technical things that you're working on, for servers, code that you want to have comments on with a purpose at the top type of thing. There's also accomplishments that you're going to keep track of, and one of the assignments for this class for Linux administration is you have to keep track of your accomplishments throughout the term. This is something that has been more and more important as we have done this work from home stuff. It's really easy for people to forget what we're doing in the background and not think about all the work we're putting in to make sure that everybody else's systems are up and running and happy. Accomplishment tracking gives us the ability to show what we've been doing, big projects that we've completed, maybe goals that we've completed or goals that we've completed ahead of time. That way, if you, for example, have one-on-ones or 360s, you can say what you've done because it's really easy to forget. Like, you might remember what you've done this week, but do you remember what you did last month? If the answer is, which it probably is for most of us, the accomplishments allow you to go back and remember that. So if you wanted to ask for a raise, a better title, or even a new job, what you want to do is take some notes so that you can keep track of everything that you've done. Now, this isn't every time you respond to an email, write it down. That's not what this is. This is, I have completed a project. You probably are going to have an accomplishment every week. You might not have an accomplishment every day, if that helps for sort of scale. So if you finished a whole project or a part of a project, or you made really good headway on a project, that might be your accomplishment for the week. Perhaps you had some tasks that you were able to complete early. That might be your accomplishment for the week. So, for example, in Linux administration, perhaps your accomplishment is creating your first virtual machine and getting CentOS installed. And that is a very reasonable accomplishment. You would not want to have an accomplishment that's, I opened VMware today, and then pat yourself on the back. It's great that you opened VMware, but that's not enough to sort of justify it as an accomplishment. You want a little bit more than that. And you're going to want to keep track of all of these accomplishments so that if anybody says, well, what did you do this week? What did you do this quarter? You can pull it out and show them, well, I did this. I beat these deadlines, I was early on these projects, and you can also add some of the bigger accomplishments, like maybe not the weekly accomplishments, maybe the monthlies or the quarterlies. You can add to your resume if it's big enough. You could add it to your LinkedIn. You could add it to your portfolio if it's not proprietary. And that way you can sort of keep this record of all of the things that you've done and accomplishment and accomplished and share so that if anybody asks, they know what you've been doing too, so that you can kind of be more at the forefront of their minds. It's also a good way of getting what I call FaceTime. When you aren't working with somebody and sort of running into them in the hallways, it can be really easy for people to forget that you're there. And so the accomplishments is the way that you are showing that you're there. One of the ways. You are also going to want to do things like, make sure you participate in meetings, respond to emails, but accomplishments is one of the ways that we can show we're there. If you have any questions, please let me know.